Understanding. What is understanding? This is a question from the side of the observer. On the part of the knower, this is the process of life. Since the process is quite global, for the convenience of the knower it is divided into periods either spiral or cyclic. Each period in awareness is fixed as a form of state associated with the representation of the form. The representation of the form is based on the capabilities of human sensory perception and correlates with short-term, operational, and long-term, conditionally permanent, memory. The duality of the memory system determines the attention, direction, and filter of incoming space waves. Since the sensory perception of a human is associated with memory, a human, as a certain system, needs to perform the functions of a trigger image, that is, to discretize the waves. Discretization is one of the main features of a human and his main characteristic as a being. The amount of discretization depends on how much short-term and long-term memory elements are formed. The property of short-term memory is that the wave state of space is fixed at the state point. The state point is the simplest element of the environ. If to combine several state points using the movement method, it's possible to create a space in this way. By the method of movement, it forms an understanding of time in a person's mind. The understanding of time correlates with different forms of space, obtained as an experience of moving either one's own or someone else's. In this case, the state point is considered to be the present time, which consists of points of movement that are accessible to the perception of a human's sensors and their correlation with short-term memory. From the point of state, a human is able to build trajectories. The trajectory of the past is based on the experience of moving of others, previously lived people. These trajectories form a representation of a space that had such wave characteristics that are currently unavailable for real understanding in the synthesis, or are available in a discrete, disjointed, form. It is necessary to understand that the present time is based on the synthesis of all points of the state. The past tense, its perception, cannot be a synthesis, since there is not at least one point of the state, u. The trajectory of the future is a prognostic of the experience of perception of the present time, one's own, and the past time, someone else's. When forming the trajectory of the future, the experience of the present and the past is synthesized. At the same time, it is necessary to understand that the trajectory of the future is nonlinear and is a spiral or cyclic. The spiral representation of the future allows you to move not only within the predictive horizon, but also to go beyond it, using the associative principle of representation of forms. In this case, each of the forms redirects your focus of attention in such a way as to capture all the areas available to the person's perception. This method is used by those who have a dialogue with others. A cyclic representation of the future can be represented in a sphere or ring. Spherical representation is based on generating perception of state points around the center, which is the perceiver. This state allows you to get an idea of movement in a straight line, which is typical for most people now. Movement in a straight line is associated with the formation of an impulse from one point of the state to another. Movement in a straight line does not take into account the wave state of other points, bringing its own impulse to their state. The ring representation is based on the center field, which is a closed ring plane with a base. Each center field rigidly fixes all state points. The ability to move in the ring occurs when the ring itself moves. This is an inefficient egregorial principle of individuals' movement with imperfect consciousness. Left in the letter is directly related to understanding the ancestors of people. Row 1, the experience of growth. Row 2, movement experience in the body, entity. Row 3, movement experience in the present. Row 4, movement experience in the sphere. Row 5, movement experience in space, past and future. Row 6, movement experience beyond the horizon. Each letter in the rows encodes a collapsed state point. The reversal of state points will relate not only to individual entities, but also to generations. A person follows the above concepts during his life. The trajectories that it forms are both its own experience and third-party experience. The acquisition of experience is necessary for a person from the point of view and state in which he is now and perceives. Finding and perceiving causes the continuous movement. Combining trajectories is impossible, since each life is unique. Moving along the associative principle inside the event horizon will lead to loss of its own movement and parasitism. The latter is increasingly practiced by people due to the fact that they cannot take advantage of the associative transition over the horizon. Therefore, the past and future, as such, are closed from man. People can only perceive elements of this time. The trajectories of the past largely depend on the gender. The trajectory of the future depends on a person's ability to predict and associate thinking. Sensory perception uses a spherical way of perception, a way of duality, in which you move to other points of the state along the shortest line. The shift in the perception angle is relative to your point of state, which is the present. A person is characterized by continuous knowledge with different volumes of content. Therefore, you are constantly shifting relative to your point of state, which was the present. Displacement, movement. This is the principle of life. What is time? A time that is convenient for sampling, the viewpoints of states in the perception, memory. Time is characteristic in human perception. Beyond it, time does not exist.